Hello, this is going to be a quick introduction for designers. So this is a designer's handbook on how you might use Blackboard in module analytics. And the intention of this really is to address four questions. Before I get into the questions, just think about what we're trying to achieve here. We're trying to make sure that this resource, this is our sort of the current version, is aimed at you course designers, and it's to really make you think about what you might consider when you're designing or making design decisions. You know, am I going to use a quiz, or how might I use how might I use a discussion board, or do I want to embed, or do I want to link out to additional resources or extra resources? And it's to give you some sort of context around that, to think about, well, what data might I derive from the actions they're doing, and how might I, or we're also going to look at it from a perspective of the delivery tutor, what information might they be able to glean from the system to help them make much more effective decisions. So the four real questions I'm addressing here is, firstly, always take a step back. Let's align, socialize this idea. Well, what do you mean by learning analytics? This conversation, we're talking about Blackboard in modular analytics, but this also aligns or feeds into the wider discussion around academic coaching and the use of engagement analytics by, as I say, on stream by the academic coach or the student journey advisor. Then I want to think about some of the specific use cases or learning scenarios, and I've got three that I'm going to talk about in this recording. And then that feeds on to some summary slides around what you might need to consider, or hopefully would consider as a designer as you're building out your materials and the learning design in the Blackboard interface. So firstly, as ever, I would like to take a step back to actually make us think about, well, what is learning analytics? Why are we using it? And what are we hoping to achieve from it? So there's sort of four areas, or I like to think is four sort of key purposes or principles for our use of it. We're really looking at supporting individual learners. So this is thinking about this from the student perspective by providing some sort of intelligence or actionable information. That might be to a student. So the last point, which I think is probably covered up by the bar at the bottom, but this idea of enabling students to take some ownership and reflect on their sort of learning gain through their learning experience, let them see information that they can make better decisions, get better experiences and outcomes, as well as provide it to teachers, to tutors, and professional services such as student journey advisors, so that they have information about the individual in a very transparent way and could take that forward. Then there's also sort of a broad area about understanding cohort behaviours and outcomes. So we're going to look at some cohort behaviours on this particular video, when we're talking about a very specific thing about using Blackboard data to understand what's happening in a quiz, a test, and what I could be able to do with this information. But of course, it sits in also a bigger piece, because we use this data from Blackboard and other sources to get a real understanding of cohort behaviours and outcomes as well. And the sort of third point really is to think about, or use this information, use our learning analytics and the data we have, just to help us understand and enhance our learning environment, both the online, the electronic, digital versions of such as Elite or whatever, but also thinking about how it joins up with our face-to-face classroom technologies and wider informal learning spaces. So we've got a lot of reasons and uses of data to give you context here, but this one I think is going to really help on points 1 and points 2 and points 4. So I've mentioned Stream already. I always like to put this slide in to help us align to that as well, to make us think, well, how does this conversation dovetail with the bigger piece? Now, as many of you will know, of course, Stream is used by our student journey advisors and by the academic coaches to be able to see or get insights into sort of student behaviours around their academic systems. And one of those systems that they use is Blackboard. Yeah. So even though we're looking at the data through the interface of Blackboard, is the realization that we also take these clicks. So as you design some of these design considerations, or you might want to think about, well, actually, how that's impacting it. I've got clicks in the module or clicks in the system that helps me understand within the stream algorithm to what extent they're engaged. So the start point for this is following our prepare, engage, and consolidate model, getting or encouraging through effective sort of in learning design in Blackboard, get them into the system, get them to use tools, get them to interact regularly, and that will help automatically feed into the stream system, and we can surface some of that information in the stream system to give both the student, the journey advisor, student journey advisor, and the academic coach some more insight. So it does indeed align, because the information, the activities you're doing here will be kind of aggregated up by the clicks. It doesn't matter if it's an announcement or you're getting them to do a quiz, or they're looking at an item, or they're clicking on something. It still acts as a click within the module. So if we turn the sort of the approach or conversation now a little bit more to, let's think about some use cases for Blackboard in module, and I've picked 3 use cases that I want to work on here. And hopefully an understanding of the learning scenarios, and then I'm also going to demonstrate how it can be achieved. So you can see these will follow the same format. Use case or the learning scenario is outlined in the middle section. We also get some tutor or the delivery person's requirements, how they might use it in the teaching and learning and conversations with students. And then we get a set of illustrative materials or further links. So have we created a YouTube video that demos this, or I will link into a course and demo it live? Are there existing resources on the Blackboard help area in terms of how I create a quiz, or how I use the question analysis tool? So there's links to those, and we'll provide those as supporting in a supporting document. And also, how does this fit with the Mtello resources that they create in the direct design? So again, we link it back to that. Well, there's a set of resources that you can go back to and follow up. And finally, is there anything you have to think about or do as the designer in the interfaces, the things you need to turn on or toggle on or off to make things happen? So this first use case or learning scenario is that you've created sort of a test your knowledge. So you put a test your knowledge. You want to use a test your knowledge quiz in Blackboard, and you're going to use the Blackboard quiz for this. You're not going to use Articulate Rise or anything like that. You're going to use the Blackboard quiz because you can author it really quickly. You can put the questions in that you wish as the designer, but the tutor needs to use the information. They want to very quickly be able to identify questions, really do the question analysis. What questions do students tending to get wrong? Where should I focus my efforts on the feedback? Which ones, therefore, did they do right and I'm going to skip, not think about? And have they reassure myself of the cohort I've got? Well, generally, have they applied a lot of these as they've applied the prepare and engage pieces into the consolidation area? So I'm thinking of a quiz. Now, of course, I could use it in prepare, or I could use it in engage, or I could use it in consolidate. It's up to me. So I'm just going to have a little look now into the software. So I'm going to take you into one of the courses. So this is into one of our staff development, learning analytics staff development courses. So it'll be perfect for this. And within this area, I have a number of quizzes, Blackboard quizzes, and these combine both closed questions, or we call objective, i.e. there's a right answer. I said what the right answer is in the system, or subjective open questions where they'll be entering text and I might have a mark scheme, a rubric or something to work with. So they combine a number of them. For instance, it might be that in the particular area of getting started with academic coaches, as you see at the bottom, we've got a quiz going on here that should take about 30 minutes and students are expected to complete it. So if I like to know they've done that in this week, and I'm say my scenario is I want to provide some feedback, I would be able to put the quiz in. I would then be able to go into where it says up here on one of the defaults is analytics. I click on the analytics tab, and I have question analysis. And as you see here, it provides me all the assessments I have in Blackboard in that particular module that I could run question analysis on. If I haven't got the data, or if some of the data's changed, it will say data no longer up to date, and I click on run report, and I will be able to, it will update itself so that I can always look at the most latest report. If that's fine, then that's fine, and then I'll just be able to click on, once you click on it and it says it's reporting, you'll get an email alert or nudge to say it's happening. So then I go into the actual report. And we go into here. Now this gives me a couple of different sort of summarizes the data for me. So as a delivery tutor, it's absolutely spot on, because what I can see firstly is I get an idea of the marks. Okay, we've got 60, nearly 61 out of 90 available, number of that were completed. I could then also see easy, medium and hard. So this is really those that answered the, if they got it right or not. So we can see that I've got 1 question in the hard, 3 in the mediums and 4 in the easy. So I'm not going to bother with the easies. I could review it if I so wish. I could go into, quickly click on the mediums, and that would show me the 3 questions, and it would also say, give me a sense that in this particular area difficulty. So I might want to rejig it so the most difficult one was the one that they tend to find most difficult comes up first. And I can see that here, multiple choice, or I've got true and false. I can see that on average, 78% of the people got this wrong, and then 75 people did it. So I can just click on that, or I'm going to take this example. I click on the question. It then delves into, gives me key information here. It gives me what was the question. So I'm preparing for my feedback session. I can see what the question is. I can see who got it with the right or wrong answer, or the responses, should I say, the number of responses. I can see they're quite close. So it's not everybody got this one right. So it says nearly 50%, just over 50% that got it wrong, got it right. So I could look at it if I wish to. I can look here on the feedback, and hopefully the design teams, you put lots of really good feedback in there, so that the designers as well as the students, so the delivery tutors as well as the students, can see it. And then I could just, in the class, that could be the question that I go through and give feedback on. Similarly, I could look at, if I so wish, come out of medium and go into hard. Again, I can see this is a true false. This one was perceived here, discrimination was quite clear there. Or I could go into use this section, and there'd be another thing that you can look at, such as it doesn't calculate that one, so this one will give me a sense of it needs review. Do I want to review it? It was fair. So this gives me an idea that what I'm trying to get here is I'm trying to achieve goods. So this actually gives me an indication perhaps I want to revisit the question and think, is the question framed correctly? Needs review. So you can see most people got it wrong. So I can go and have a revisit of this to think, have I phrased something incorrectly, or whatever? Was there something about the question that they're struggling with in the way that I reviewed it? So again, really useful technique to see there. So that's the scenario 1, which is about the cohort analysis. Just lets the tutor put a quiz in. Tutors can really quickly get in there, see what they want to select to provide generic or feedback on, so that they're not going through individual all the individual questions. The next one, which I'm not going to demo, we're going to demo this elsewhere, is this idea of using the discussion board. So Blackboard has a discussion board, and there's 2 pieces of work here really that associates the discussion board. The first one is I can get some just general analytics out looking the discussion board, which gives me a sense of who's used it, who hasn't responded, and I always have the opportunity within the who hasn't responded to send out a nudge to those, an email or a message to those to say, you're not haven't participated yet in this discussion board, please do that. So that's a great opportunity there. But this particular case is looking at providing a sort of a journal club, and the idea here is that each week another group of students would critique an article as required, make their summary or critique of that. Other students would be able to come in, review that, add comments, form a conversation going through it. And the two very powerful learning model there, used a lot on as they mature out through their undergraduate or on postgraduate activities, very popular there as a learning design model. And what the tutor really needs to understand here, the delivery tutor, is are they, as I say, are they participating? And if they're not, nudge them quickly, easily, effectively, and efficiently through the system. And also identify if students need some further support or academics in terms of academic terminology, writing, and skills. So this is where, as a tool, or in addition to the Blackboard discussion board, if I make the Blackboard discussion board assessed, and we've got an example here from Entella of how you create a discussion board. I've got the links to the key articles you want on creating, grading, and using the discussion board analysis tool. So I could click on that if I so wished. And it would come through and it would start to give me the sense here of who hasn't, and this is where I have the 3 dots. I can click on that to email them. What my general participation level is, who's most active, etc. And as I go further down it, I can start to build into this idea of, once I've said it's assessed, I can then start to build into ideas here about the terminology they're using. They're written. Is it what's the level of word variation? What's the critical thinking level based on the particular model that we know that we're there? Them about their individual student, because I'm looking at the student here. In this case, I'm looking at Chris Cass. I can see how they've participated against the class, etc. So there's 2 pieces of work going on here. There's this idea of using the discussion board to provide a delivery tutor with a really quick way of identifying who's participating, who's not. If I use groups as well, I can go overall, or I can go into these specific groups of the same page. So I could set up group discussion boards, which is really cool. And if I wanted to get more information, so for instance, an example here might be something where English is a second language. I might be looking at a lot of international students on a course or something like that. And I want to start to introduce this at the start of the module to help signpost when you with delivery tutors to students that in fact your word variation scores compared to the class is low or not, or their critical thinking based on this calculation is lower than others. So therefore, you might need to look at engage with the study skills team or wider support teams at the university. So this is the idea. As I say, we're using the discussion board analytics to help understand what's happening in terms of participation, types of levels of participation, and types of terminology and phrasing that you're using. The third one is I just really, instead of looking at specific tasks within Blackboard, i.e. what they're doing on a quiz or how are they performing across on a discussions thread or discussion board, I'm kind of now taking a step back to say, right, well, what sort of behaviors are they students showing in terms of comparing their accesses and their marks? And this is something called the this is where we use the sort of content activity and marks panel. And I'm going to show you how to do this. The idea here is basically the delivery tutor with their cohort, which is to get a quick insight into which students are either engaged but not or to increase their engagement with the course materials, or some of them are working really hard and you want to quickly email or contact them to say well done, module level, this is fabulous, these are really good behaviors. Or you might want to identify students that seem to be putting a lot of time on task but not getting the appropriate outcomes based on what's happening in the assessment. So if we're assessing things, so if you're using a quiz or you've got an assessed discussion board or something like that, these, depending on the amount of information over time, will feed into this panel. Again, it's a really, really useful thing to have. In terms of do you need to do anything specific, the important thing here is yes, you need to set up something called an overall marks column. Um, and we've got a video that'll sort of outline that, show how to do that. There's some course activity help guides from Blackboard, etc. And also just reach out to your helpful learning technologist. So let me have a little click on this and try to give you a sense of what I'm looking at here. So again, I'm back in my course, and I'm back in my Digital Academy Learning Analytics for Staff. Now I'm going to the gradebook, and this is where I'll find it. And it's kind of usefully not tucked away in the corner. So to get it, assuming you can see here, I've got an overall marks column. I've created one of those. And what I'm doing in the overall marks column is I'm taking some contributions from these two activities, but I'm not bothering with this one because, or this one because they're not enabled or whatever. But if I go over into the cog, I can see something called View Class Performance. I click on View Class Performance. It opens up this panel called the Course Activity Related to Marks panel. And this gives me a sense here of marks on the side. So this is coming from the Grade Center, which is why that use of some quizzes is really, really good because it helps feed this point here. And it also compares hours in the course for my particular class. I could look at it as a lovely scatter, or I could just look at it, if I wish, as a set of tables, and I can manage and I can sort of filter and realign them based on those things. So here we can see as we build our story up, I've got some stuff going on at the bottom. There's certain individuals who may have had no mark and no integration activity, and as you go further up, there's something like this. If this is a proper course, which it is, course is clearly not because you've seen the assessment models. I would think about, oh, these up here is this sort of area is quite interesting. They're putting a lot of hours in the course compared to their peers, but they're not getting the appropriate marks. So is that I want to talk to? It puts on an average. It puts on a sort of regression and average there. And then I can also see people here that are doing really, really well. And I can reach out to those. If I wish to create a group, we can start toggling these on and off, and this will highlight groups, etc. I could look into a particular person in more detail. Just take a little while to chug through. I'll do it another way. So I could look into Andy Ramsden's in more detail, and I get the additional piece comes up of looking at how they've accessed it, hours in course by date compared to the cohort, averaging there. And then I can also have a look at how Andy's grade was compared to the average, and that was available. I can see that Andy's grade is significantly lower than the average grade coming through here. This is, as I say, pulls from the grade center there. If I so wished, I could contact Andy. I could click on the messages tab, and then this would send something there. Would pick that up. And to help the process for the tutor, delivery tutor as well, we can start to, within the settings cog, set up some conditions that if the student is inactive for a certain number of days, or their mark falls down below a certain percentage, you would be identified, the tutors in the course would be identified through the activity stream on Blackboard. Yeah, and then also I could notify the students if I so wish. Okay, so that's covered this one here. So hopefully you've got a sense there that I could have if I want to use the quiz and the discussion board, I can automatically provide information to my delivery tutors to enact upon. Fabulous. And I've also got the opportunity here of trying to pull together through the module interface some actions or level of interactions and set some alerts or nudges to myself or to the student around those behaviors. So just to finish and finish this off, what does this, or what should we consider when designing it? Now I've broken this down into the student perspective and the perspective of the delivery tutor. From the student's perspective, the sort of things that you're considering when you're doing is provide, where possible, lots of feedback and feed forward. So the fact that when you do the quiz, spend time, thought around that feedback option, because in the quiz you can set it up so that you don't deliver the feedback at the point of the result. So I could delay it in the sense you get the sense of you complete the quiz today, in 2 days time you get your cohort feedback from your delivery tutor, and then I automatically deliver the feedback 2 days after that in electronic format. So you can set up this sequence. So if you can use the feedback options to both give them information to feed forward to the future, as well as linking back to specifics in the course or other that you've covered, it's really, really powerful. Think about the engagement. This is quite a common piece of feedback from students where you're overusing tools. So if I keep doing the quiz, test your knowledge every week, it loses its potential in terms of engaging. I want to look at different tool sets and think creatively around those tool sets to give students different sort of opportunities through different tools and approaches to do those activities. So one that is we're looking at quite a lot at the moment is how can we develop or change basically a test your knowledge quiz, 5 questions, boom, 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 to an escape room scenario, even a group-based escape work scenario that happens to give you exactly the same educational outcomes as the test your knowledge quiz, and you can track as well. So we're just trying to mix up that learning model. Focus where as ever on the inbuilt Blackboard tools, because therefore the data is there to be enacted upon. If I'm using things like articulate rise, which is quite a common one in a lot of the designs, that information isn't going anywhere. It's not going back into Blackboard to be enacted upon by the design tutor. They can't get the information from what the people have done in those quizzes or activities really, really quickly and easily. So have a think about make sure you, where possible, you align to the Blackboard toolset. And if you are using, which of course you can, because we have the HTML content editor, we have things like Microsoft Sway, we have ability to drop in YouTube videos, you have exciting things that you can do there. Try to think about embedding as opposed to linking out. So when you link out on occasions, if you're not careful on the linking out, the student might lose their place within that sort of learning journey, and from their perspective, linking out might create a poor experience and poor learning opportunities there. So from the design delivery tutor's perspective, for me, these are the sort of the key things which we're really thinking forward to get. Again, it's trying to make their life easier, because as we all know, they're coming in, they're doing a lot, they want to get information quickly and accurate information to make good decisions about. So think about the time on task. So if you're continually using discussion board analysis, etc., that takes a lot of time. So you might want to think about using different opportunities, on using them not as frequently within your design. I'm not expecting you every week to go through. It might be once or twice within that 3 times or whatever in a 6-week period, where I'm expecting you to go in and collect a lot of this information or use it in a certain way. To think very much about how much time you're asking the delivery tutor to spend collecting and enabling, and then their data literacy is making decisions on this. So you really decide when to use it most effectively. And also think about providing, it goes back to the student one, but if you're thinking about time, by front loading my feedback, providing very good detailed feedback so students can make good decisions about it, or using in a discussion or some assessed piece of work. I might want them to upload a written piece of work, and I might want the delivery tutors to quickly go through those pieces to review them and assess them. If I use a rubric in that scenario, the student can upload it, the documents in Blackboard, that I've got a rubric next to it as a formative activity. It's really quick and easy. Same with the discussion board. It's meaning the time on task for the delivery tutors reduced. It will also provide a lot more consistent feedback to the student and quality assured students feedback. So from a delivery choose just remember them when you're designing and building this all out, because we can provide and you can build out some really effective learning designs, feeding a lot of information into them having this insight, but we just got to think of the workload from their perspective, where it really adds value, where it would be most insightful for that value added through the sort of term, through the year planner or the time planner you've got. So I hope that's been useful. If you've got any questions, of course, just contact us.